Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Youthquake 4.0, A Whole Generation and the New Industrial Revolution, by Rocky Scopelliti. Narrated by Tom Bromhead. Introduction. We are living in the age of accelerated transformation. While transformation itself is not necessarily new to us, the frequency, pace, and impact of transformation today is unprecedented. There has never been a more important time to stop and consider the question, how will we increase our capacity to adapt to a world of accelerated change? To answer this question, we will explore demographic change within the context of the environment that we can anticipate it will be exposed to. This is what we will examine in this book. We know that populations are aging and that life expectancy has steadily been increasing by 2 to 3 years each decade. At the other end of the age spectrum, Millennials, 18 to 34 years, have now become the largest demographic group on the planet, representing 1 in 3, 2.1 billion, people. They are likely to be the first generation to have a 50% chance of living to 100 years. This means they are also likely to see the emergence of 4-generation families, so our notion of family structure will profoundly change from what has come before. Their proportionate representation in society, whether it's as business leaders or policymakers in the workplace, government or institutions, or whether they are influencing spiritual, academic, scientific or technological advances, will only increase from here on. Millennials are integral to the question and the subject of this book. Demographers Neil Howe and William Strauss invented the label Millennials, but this demographic cohort is also commonly referred to as Generation Y, those born between 1981 and 2000. Social researchers applied that label as it follows Generation X, or those born between 1965 and 1980. Baby boomers is the label used to describe those born between 1946 and 1964, most of whom are the parents of millennials. Millennials have become aware of the 100-year life and are planning accordingly. From an environmental perspective, while the world's cities cover just 2% of the Earth's surface, today they account for 55% of its population. Cities are predicted by the United Nations to be home to 86% of global populations by 2050. We are indeed Homo urbanus. These cities will become smarter as they, and our lives and businesses, become increasingly digitally connected. Until now, these connected devices, sensors and systems have generated 90% of the total data that has ever been produced. Many analysts, however, predict that by 2020, some 200 billion objects will be connected, 26 smart objects for every living person. Just imagine what data will be produced and what new services and businesses these will give rise to by 2020. Data has become the 21st century's energy, increasingly originating from urbanization. Intelligence is becoming predictive and artificially developed. Lifestyle processes and services are becoming automated. Healthcare quality and life expectancy is improving with advances in biotechnology, innovation, and genetic engineering. Major threats to life, property, and privacy are now digitally industrialized and borderless. Industries, organizations, and ecosystems are regenerating or disappearing at exponential rates as they reprogram for the 21st century. Life is anything but predictable, and uncertainty has become the new normal as we transition into the imagination economy. The convergence of demographically fueled behavioral changes associated with the millennial demographic and emerging technologies associated with the fourth industrial revolution are affecting every industry and every part of our global economy. The fourth industrial revolution builds on the third technological revolution and is characterized by the augmentation of technologies from the physical, digital, and biological spheres. Collectively, this convergence gives rise to an accelerated multiplication effect, which is why this book is titled Youthquake 4.0. The impact of this effect is challenging our notions of how time is structured, innovation pursued, and how traditional models of production, distribution, and scale are becoming decoupled from growth and the supply of scarce resources through exponential models. It is worth reflecting that the first industrial revolution occurred from the 18th to 19th centuries, when mostly agrarian rural societies became industrial and urban. The development of the steam engine and textile industries was central to this revolution's development. The Second Industrial Revolution occurred between 1870 and 1914. This era saw the rise of steel, oil, and electricity used to power and create mass production in assembly. Major technology advancements were in the areas of telecommunications, lighting, the phonograph, and the internal combustion engine. The Third Industrial Revolution of the 1980s saw advancements in analog through to digital technology, mechanical devices, and automation. This period gave rise to the personal computer, the internet, and information communication technology, including wireless technology, which is why it is also referred to as the digital revolution. While our traditional linear view of the future, the models and methodologies we use to forecast and operate our businesses, and the associated legacy technology may have served us well in the first, second, and part of the third industrial revolutions, they are inadequate and unreliable predictors of the future needs of societies, value creation, behaviour of markets, and economic performance or survival in the fourth industrial revolution. Welcome to Youthquake, Oxford Dictionary's 2017 Word of the Year. Youthquake is defined as a significant cultural, political, or social change arising from the actions or influence of young people. This is not a new term. Youthquake was first coined by Vogue magazine's editor-in-chief, Diana Vreeland, in 1965, to describe the cultural movement on the streets of London by a new generation of young people we now know as baby boomers. Vreeland wrote in her article entitled Youthquake, "Youth is surprising countries east and west, with a sense of assurance serene beyond all years. First hit by the surprise wave, England and France already accept the new jump-off age as one of the exhilarating realities of life today. The same exuberant tremor is now coursing through America, which practically invented this century's youth in the first place." Ironically, the term Renaissance, 5 decades later, has been used to describe baby boomers' children, the Millennials. We shouldn't be surprised that the first and most powerful influence on Millennials was their parents. Youthquake for baby boomers was so well captured in the lyrics. There's a whole generation, with a new explanation, people in motion. In Scott McKenzie's 1967 hit song and generational anthem, San Francisco, Be Sure to Wear Flowers in Your Hair. That song reached #1 in the United Kingdom, encapsulating the spirit of a generation during the 1960s craving significant cultural, political, and social change. An unusual generation, a problematic generation, a puzzling generation, a preoccupied generation, an entitled, ungrateful generation? Was there ever a rising generation in history not given those labels? As George Orwell so well articulated, each generation imagines itself to be more intelligent than the one that went before it, and wiser than the one that comes after it. Or are millennials simply a generation that, like their baby boomer parents, have formed their social, cultural, and economic beliefs for the environment in which they grew up? For example, might millennials' perceived lack of loyalty reflect their perfectly understandable need to explore life's many options? Might their perceived entitlement be a misinterpretation of their empowerment? Might their preoccupation with technology reflect their desire to remain socially connected? The tsunami of stereotyping and typecasting directed at millennials would seem to be overgeneralizations born of misinterpretations, since they seem to have a clear idea about how to live in the contemporary world, and they have a vision for its future. To them, the world is their neighborhood. It is worth reflecting on one of the many essential points about their mostly baby boomer parents to help explain their influence on millennials. In their view of the future, baby boomers were shaped by two different and contradictory influences. First, baby boomers grew up in the post-war economic boom of the Second Industrial Revolution, where electric power was used to achieve mass production and the division of labour. There wasn't just a baby boom, but manufacturing, mining, and housing booms. That period also saw the rise to power of the working class. Baby boomers were enveloped in prosperity, developing an unquenchable thirst for in-home appliances, telephones fixed to walls, white goods, televisions, motor vehicles, and leisure activities that fueled the creation of many new consumer markets. The era ushered in suburbia, New neighborhoods sprang up, and the locality symbolized status, class, and lifestyles. To baby boomers, life was a never-ending pathway of gratification, with the promise of success, wealth, and opulence. But this was tempered by the threat of no future at all. The second powerful but contrasting influence on them was the Cold War. They grew up in the era of mutually assured destruction, MAD. This was the era of nuclear weapons being massively stockpiled by the United States and the Soviet Union, and the threat they would be used, triggering World War III. Baby boomers grew up amidst this superpower tension. So how did they reconcile these contradictory influences? Their motivation shifted from delayed gratification to embracing instant gratification, despite this description being synonymous with millennials. Baby boomers' generational catch cry was, "We're not here for a long time, we're here for a good time." They became famous for their impatience, rushing into marriage, rushing into parenthood, rushing into debt, for their frivolous spending, and for their reluctance to plan for the long term. Baby boomers were labelled the me generation by their parents, the silent generation, born between 1927 and 1945, who were puzzled by their self-indulgent, live-for-now mentality and liberated sexuality brought about by the contraceptive pill. But baby boomers were living in a way that was consistent with those contradictory influences. As history now records, baby boomers were thankfully here for a long time. The good times of the 1960s were not fulfilled by the events of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Life was much harder for the baby boomers than they envisaged. They were living through a youthquake that was characterized by transformations such as the gender revolution, which reshaped our views on marriage and divorce and redefined the nature of family life. Economies were restructured, including a radical redistribution of work and wealth between classes. There were levels of unemployment not seen since the Great Depression, and there was the beginning of the information technology revolution. While baby boomers were living the dream of retiring at 55, changes to the retirement age in many countries, a lack of planning, and the global financial crisis had seen most continue working for longer to achieve financial security in retirement. Youthquake for millennials, on the other hand, will be quite different to that of their parents. They traverse three distinct life stages. Stage 1 is the shift from youth to adulthood. For most, this occurs around the 17 to 18-year mark. Importantly, millennials' participation in education is the highest of any generation. Among OECD countries, 42% of millennials aged 25 to 34 years hold a higher education degree, compared to 26% of their baby boomer parents, and so this stage is very different to that of their parents. Stage 2, the transition from student life into professional life that occurs broadly between the ages of 18 to mid-20s, sees many millennials graduating with a student debt, something that didn't exist for their parents. Stage 3, the transition from single life into family life, sees many millennials, unlike their baby boomer parents, staying single for longer. For example, in the United States, 48% of baby boomers were married by the age of 32, versus 26% of millennials. While these stages are being deferred for longer compared to their baby boomer parents, as each of these transitions occur, their needs, expectations, economic value, and attitudes toward life fundamentally change. Why is it, then, that they continue to be typecast as though they are the same globally? It doesn't make sense, right? We need to smash the smashed avocado on toast stereotype, because millennials have grown up in a different environment to other generations. Millennials grew up during the digital revolution that began in the 1980s, where the advancement of technology saw the shift from mechanical and analog electronic technology to digital electronics. Amidst that information technology environment, they developed into the most highly educated, diverse, media-saturated, and connected generation. They are now shaping the 21st century and will propel the fourth industrial revolution. To millennials, their voice and influence is global through the social media they continue to fuel. It's instantly delivered to their smartphones, and that's become as natural to them as the air they breathe, efficiently consumed through the artificially intelligent, personalized, platform-based exponential models serving them. We need to embrace them, not ostracize them. We need to go beyond just listening to them as they crave to be heard. For this generation, their catch cry will be, "We're here for a good time and we're here for a long time, so we'd better take care of our world." Just like their parents who gave rise to the economic boom, this generation will give rise to the next technological boom. Welcome also to the fourth industrial revolution that is augmenting our physical, digital, and biological systems. As Klaus Schwab, founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, describes, "We are at the beginning of a revolution that is fundamentally changing the way we live, work, and relate to one another." He also proposes that businesses, industries, and corporations will face continuous Darwinian pressure, and as such, the philosophy of always in beta, always evolving, will become more prevalent. This philosophy directly informs the question at hand. In this environment, how do we increase our capacity to adapt? The evidence to date suggests that nations, industries, and corporations are yet to fully capitalize on the benefits of the current digital revolution, which may well be the single biggest barrier to unlocking the potential of the fourth industrial revolution. This revolution is characterized by emerging technology breakthroughs with potentially highly disruptive effects in the areas of artificial intelligence, robotics, the Internet of Things, IoT, autonomous vehicles, 3D printing, biotechnology, nanotechnology, material science, energy storage, blockchain, and quantum computing. Mastering the fourth industrial revolution was the theme of the World Economic Forum annual meeting in 2016 in Davos, Klosters, Switzerland. According to Klaus Schwab, the fourth industrial revolution differs from the previous ones in its speed, scale, and impact. It will be a cyber-physical system characterized by new technologies that are augmenting our digital, physical, and biological worlds. In this book, I will argue that interconnected trust is what fuses these worlds, requiring a paradigm shift in relationships between ideas, people, and technology, and as such, is a further reason why this revolution differs from those in the past. Why write this book? As 2017 drew to a close, I was saddened by the illnesses impacting my family and friends. I couldn't wait for the year to end. Serendipitously, it was announced that the term Youthquake was the Oxford Dictionary's Word of the Year 2017. The word not only reflected the ethos, mood, and preoccupations of 2017, but was also judged as having lasting potential as a word of cultural significance. My sadness immediately dissipated, replaced by an overwhelming sense of joy and happiness. Yes, I thought, the world finally gets that it's their time, millennials, and this juvenescence is a singularity for us all to embrace and celebrate. As heartbreaking as it is, witnessing loved ones' lives evaporating, it's important and joyous to imagine what life can be. My life's purpose is to make the world a better place through thought leadership, and those personal experiences presented me, in that moment, the gift of Youthquake. As an ambassador of this amazing millennial generation, this was just the best news. Thoughts of Youthquake, then, became my happiness sanctuary. Through this book, I will explain how this remarkable generation, equipped with the most exciting technological advancements of the fourth industrial revolution, will impact all facets of our society, making our world a better place. For many years, I've been privileged to research how millennials and digital technology are impacting our world. Importantly, we have now crossed two major inextricably linked inflection points that require new thinking and leadership about human and technological adaptation. The millennial demographic has now become the largest demographic on the planet and a global phenomenon, together with next-generation technologies, in shaping humanity with the fourth industrial revolution. I'm often surprised by the number of organizations that report they are customer-centric, employees are engaged, stakeholders consulted, investor-aligned, and technologically transformed. Yet, what's missing is an integrated strategy that puts a face to those customers, employees, policymakers, partners, and investors. If it's about customer acquisition, well, that's marketing's area. If it's about employment, well, that's human resources area. If it's about innovation, well, that's digital's or IT's area. Millennials are treated as though they have multiple lives, but they are the same people. They just don't compartmentalize their lives like previous generations. They expect their lives to be intertwined. I'm equally intrigued by the simultaneous fascination and anxiety that leaders have around disruption, innovation, and transformation, and the treatment of these forces as though they are mutually exclusive from human capital and demographic change. Digital is often referred to as a contemporary descriptor for the IT department, or what marketing and sales does to attract and sell to customers, or what operations does to improve productivity or efficiency. What's missing is a holistic view and strategy about what digital means to their customers, employees, business model, the industry ecosystem within which they function, and what this means to their organization's purpose. The globalization of disruption shows no signs of abating. The investment environment is awash with capital and has developed an unquenchable thirst for entrepreneurship. Global annual venture capital funding surged 50% in 2017 to $164 billion invested across 11,042 deals. Propelled by Asia, now representing 43% of that investment, United States 44%, and Europe 11%. Startups, accelerator programs, and innovation hubs are now globally thriving from locations in Silicon Valley, New York, London, Israel, China, Sydney, Berlin, Singapore, etc. Whichever way you look at disruption, the numbers are staggering. And while studies show that age is not a predictor of the success of startups, the millennial generation has had more access to capital and resources, as well as the desire and skills than the generations preceding them, which is demonstrated by the capacity that investors, corporates, and governments have created by investing in their ideas and initiatives. These forces are not mutually exclusive, but rather symbiotic. This book aims to be the desiderata of how the millennials and the Fourth Industrial Revolution collectively influence the way we think about our social, cultural, economic, and technological future. A whole generation with a new industrial revolution, and they are both in motion. I will analyze the confluence of these two inextricably linked global forces, leveraging research from world-leading institutions and thought leaders to provide insights toward global changes, economics, society, technology, and innovation. It will transform the way you think about this remarkable generation and the influence they will increasingly have. It will invoke excitement for the unimaginable innovation that awaits us in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and the numerous resulting opportunities for citizens, societies, and businesses. The insights in this book are for individuals, leaders, and policymakers seeking to unlock opportunities by developing specific adaptation or transformation strategies from the interplay between the millennial mind and the emerging technologies in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Importantly, I hope these insights inspire you to consider the role you can play in adapting your organization's immune system, which today may be resisting change. For individuals, the pursuit of making the world a better place might be one of your most rewarding life experiences. Organizations that reinvent themselves effectively will become the beneficiaries of the future sources of leadership, skills, entrepreneurship, corporate social responsibility, innovation, and resulting profits. Section 1. Welcome to Youthquake. Chapter 1. Demographic Influence. Millennials aren't entitled, they're empowered. The future promise of any nation can be directly measured by the present prospects of its youth. John F. Kennedy, 35th President of the United States. I'm sure most of us can recall where we were when major events occur in the world. For me, 24th of June 2016 is a date I'll always remember. After a 22-hour flight from Sydney to London, my family and I were somewhat fatigued, but eager to experience the first leg of a wonderful 3-week holiday in Europe. I was excited to witness my children's first classic English experience, the black cab at Heathrow Airport. I'd elevated my children's expectations about these iconic vehicles and the extensive training English taxi drivers undertake to perform their job. "Covent Garden, thanks, driver," I said, followed by, "This is my kids' first trip to Europe, and I'm sure they'd love to know what they can expect this week in London." The driver replied disappointingly, "We're no longer part of Europe. Yesterday was Brexit Day, and it's going to be a gloomy week." He then shared with us for the 45-minute drive into London how this was a tragic day in English and European history. What caught my attention in the driver's comments was how disappointed he was in the result, given that pre-polling indicated that 73% of young people wanted to remain part of the European Union, EU. They didn't vote, he said. His point was that millennials did not participate in the referendum to the extent they could have. And if they had, the result would have been completely different, given the narrow margin of victory. When we got out of the taxi, my daughter said to me, "Gee, English taxi drivers know a lot about politics too, don't they?" That first day in London was quite surreal, as was that week, as predicted by the taxi driver. Commentators, bus drivers, politicians, business leaders, and the British public were asking questions. How did this happen? What does it mean? Who do we blame or thank? Exit polls reported that older voters favoured exiting the EU, and younger voters favoured remaining in the EU. The Remain supporters looked on in despair, stunned and bewildered by the result. A student from Staffordshire University, interviewed by the BBC News, said, "I'm annoyed that baby boomers have messed things up for us again. Had a generational divide opened up in the UK, I wondered? And is this divide global?" Let's begin by considering some very significant statistical demographic changes occurring throughout the world, how they may impact society, and the policy dilemmas and opportunities they present for politicians and business leaders. First, the ageing population. The increasing proportion of older persons in a population is poised to become one of the most significant global transformations of the 21st century. According to the United Nations, between 2015 and 2030, the number of people in the world aged 60 years or over is projected to grow by 56%, from 901 million to 1.4 billion. Between 2015 and 2050, when today's millennials reach 60 years of age, the global population of older persons is projected to double to nearly 2.1 billion. The number of people aged 80 years or over, the oldest old persons, is growing even faster, and the United Nations predicts it will almost triple between 2018 and 2050 to 434 million. This massive ageing trend has implications for nearly all sectors of society, including labour markets, financial markets, and the demand for goods and services such as housing, transportation and social support, as well as family structures and their intergenerational ties. Second, 2015 was a landmark year demographically, with millennials between the ages of 18 to 35 years rising to become the most populous age group on the planet. Almost 1 in 3 humans are part of a millennial population that numbers more than 2 billion people. By 2050, they'll be 54 to 69 years old and will occupy positions of leadership across government, businesses, religious institutions, and broader society. As a result, millennials have now become a leading indicator for social, political, economic, cultural, and technological development. For political parties, their global voice will increasingly influence policy direction. For businesses, their value will influence economic performance. For employers, their technological proficiency will see the adoption of emerging disruptive technologies that fundamentally change our world at rates and scales of unprecedented levels. For society, their values and beliefs will influence our cultures. So let's consider the concentration of millennials by country. Most of them, that is, 86%, live in large emerging markets, with half from Brazil, India, China, and Indonesia. These countries are also the most heavily populated. We can also see that at a regional level, Asia has become the millennial epicenter, where 58% of millennials live. The scale of millennials in those countries' populations provides the opportunity for economic growth through what the International Monetary Fund describes as the demographic dividend. This is achieved in 2 ways: through investment in economic development and family welfare, leading to growth in per capita income, and through the accumulation of assets that become invested domestically or internationally, resulting in rising national income. In developing countries such as Bangladesh, the Philippines, and Vietnam, this means that deploying their vast millennial populations could lead to rapid growth, projected to be 6% of GDP by 2020. In contrast, in some countries where unemployment is relatively high, such as Egypt, 42%, Iran, 29%, and South Africa, 53%, we see lower than average projected.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?